All right, now we are back to the Dvar Malchut. And if you remember, we're learning in the Dvar Malchut about Moshiach. And we're learning about how the third temple will be made from iron. And that even though that iron is a bad thing, and that's why it was not allowed to be used in the building of the temple, of the first temple, the second temple, and the tabernacle, even though there was ample iron available, but nevertheless it was not used because iron is a weapon of war, a weapon of destruction, and therefore was not used. And nevertheless, the whole point of Mashiach will be eventually to transform all the bad in the world to be positive, to the point where eventually there won't even be any death in the world. Now, death is a very negative thing. I mean, we're trying to make the most of it. You know, most of it tells us that life has a limit to it, and we have to accomplish things when we're alive, and we shouldn't think that we're God. You know, things that. But basically, life, the death is not a good thing. And if Adam had not eaten from the tree, no one would die. And it says by certain tzaddikim that they didn't die. It says that Yaakov didn't die. It says that Moses didn't die. And in the end, nobody's going to die. In the end, it's going to be even, and those people who did die will see that they really didn't die. That it's really, they just sort of, how do you say, became spiritualized for a while. And they lost the true, essential, infinite, physical body that God gave to Adam. People were supposed to live forever. What does that mean, living forever? It means that people just felt that God was creating them. And they acted accordingly. Which in a way is, pretty hard to believe. But on the other hand, it's not so hard to believe. Just here we are, right? We're all here. How do we get here? Right now, let's not think about tomorrow. Let's not think about yesterday. And let's not think about all the people that did die already. Just look at yourself right now. You exist, right? Here you are existing every moment. Forget about what's going to be in the next second. Forget about what was in the past. Here you are right now. You're alive. How are you alive? How are you? Where is it coming from, right? So there's no really logical reason to say that this shouldn't just continue all the time. You just keep being alive. The problem is people get older. Okay, so you won't get older. Or you get older and then every 10 years you'll get refreshed again or something like that. Hashem will figure it out. But the fact of the matter is that one big reason why it says that people don't die, the angel of death doesn't kill people, that people's sins kill people. The sins people. There's a whole story about what is it, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, that there was this big, terrible serpent that was biting people. It's a whole midrash, and I forget which Gemara it's in, but it's a whole story that it was killing people, lived in this hole, and that they said everybody went by, he would bite it, and the person would die. That's the whole thing. They would run to the water, whoever got to the water first. Anyway, so Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa said, "Where is this dangerous venomous serpent?" It says in that hole, but watch out. So Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa took off his shoe and his stocking and put his foot over the hole, and the serpent came out and bit him, and the serpent died. And they said, from this we learn, and they said, how did you do that? He said, because serpents do not kill, sins kill. What does sins mean? Egotism. So egotism is what kills. So after that, they said, woe to the person that is bitten by the serpent, and woe to the serpent that bites Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Okay, so we see that ideally it should be that everyone that all bad is transformed to good, and that is hinted at by the third temple will be made from barzel, iron, which is usually a weapon of the opposite of life, becomes life. I'll answer your question after the class, immediately after the class. Al Pizeh, according to this, or is it something that's really important for now? Let's have a look and see. Maybe it's something like that. That's right. Everybody, you vibrant, very good. This is true. Everybody will be happy, not like now. Nowadays, nobody's happy. Nowadays, you give a person everything he wants, he's still miserable. Somebody has more, you feel bad. Or you're worried about losing it, right? Losing it. Okay, so now we can understand, this is the idea of barzel, iron. According to this, we can understand, my pointer back here. According to this, we can understand, that's the whole thing of the 10th day of Tevis. The 10th day of Tevis. Now we're in the month of Tevet this month. And the 10th day of the month of Tevet is the day when, 2,500 something years ago, that Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to the city of Jerusalem. And that was the beginning of all of these other occurrences that led to the destruction of the first temple and then consequently the destruction of the second temple. So it was a pretty bad day. Says the Rebbe that essentially was not a bad day, that the Nebuchadnezzar really didn't do anything. He just laid siege to the city and he didn't touch anything, didn't hurt anything. And he was coming to tell everybody that, keep in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is total fear of God, pure, healthy fear of God. Healthy fear of God. And the Jewish people have to have unity. He made them, forced unity on them, kept them all inside of the city. So he was supporting Somach, he was supporting, strengthening Judaism. So he says, now we can understand another thing about the 10th day of Teves. This is the beginning of the third temple. How so? Because exactly the opposite. I mean, how can the Rebbe say anything like that? This is exactly the opposite. The 10th day of Teves was the beginning of the destruction of the temples. Says the Rebbe, yeah, if you're short-sighted. But the fact of the matter is that the first temple was destroyed in order to make the second temple, which in some ways was better. It says it was bigger and it lasted 10 years longer. And the second temple, says the Rebbe, is destroyed in order for the third temple to be built. So if so, this process, which was begun by Nebuchadnezzar laying siege to Jerusalem, which led to the destruction of the temple, these were only stages in the building of the third temple and the future redemption which will accompany it. Even though that the siege of the 10th day of Teves was the beginning of the things of the destruction of the temple, but and since Kavanah is that the real intention of this is that after that, and by means of this, will be built the third temple. By it Nitzchi, an eternal temple, house. Nimsa, so it comes out. By the way, this idea of temple is sort of made up. I mean, it's not called the holy temple. It's called the holy house. Beit HaMikdash. It's called the holy house. But I guess that sort of, takes away the glory of what it was. But that, in fact, of what it was. The main thing of it was not the temple part of it. The main thing of part of it was the holy part of it. So it was a house like any other house, right? It was built to certain different specifications, but there were bigger houses and bigger this, right? But the main thing was holy, So Nimso so comes out, at the beginning of the destruction of the temple and the destruction of the temple was really in order the beginning of the future. And this was hinted at b'siman shenitan b'sheichus lematzor the asar b'teves. This was given at by the hint of what's going on in the 10th day of Teves. I'll interject over here. There's a story that I read. I guess it's more of a parable than a story. That two people went from the city into the countryside. They had never been. The people lived in the city their whole lives, and they never went out of the country, into the country. So they went to the countryside. And they saw a beautiful field. Beautiful field. They saw it so beautiful with flowers. And all of a sudden there comes a farmer with a tractor and he plows up the whole field. And one of them says to the other, this guy's a maniac. He had such a nice field and there was flowers in it and there was grass and this. And he plowed the whole thing up. Now it looks terrible. What's going to be? And all these little bugs are jumping out because he dug up the ground. So the other one said, let's have a little bit of patience and we'll see. And so sure enough, they go and they see, here's the farmer comes out and he has a big basket, whatever, and it's got grains of wheat in it. And he starts throwing the grains of wheat into these furrows that he made. And one says, this guy's really a maniac. First of all, he wrecks up his field. Now he's wrecking up these, he has wheat, he can grind up the wheat, he can make, something from it, he can do bread from it, throwing away his seeds, throwing away the seeds. The other one says, let's have a little bit of patience. And so they come back in a while, and they see that sure enough, there grows up beautiful wheat, it's more beautiful than it was before. Right? More beautiful than it was before. And then the farmer comes out with a sickle and he starts chopping it all down. And one of them says, wow, now I see this guy is even more crazy than we thought. Finally, he got to made the field more beautiful than it was in the first. I had doubts, but now I really understand this guy is a maniac. This wheat field is so beautiful how it flows in the wind and everything like that. I'm getting out of here. It's the same thing. God had the first temple. It was really very beautiful. He plowed the thing up. Then he has a second temple. He chopped the whole thing down. But the fact of the matter is that by chopping it down, you get the wheat. First of all, you get more wheat, more grains. And not only that, from the grains, you can also make more bread. So the final product of it is even incomprehensible, incomparable to the beginning, the first two. And in the story that I told you, it's sort of the end is not anywhere near as good as in the what we want to learn from the metaphor. The third temple is not just going to be more in quantity, like in my story that I told. It's going to be something totally different in quality. It'll be not only that, and that's why it'll be made from iron to show that this whole entire world, all the bad things in the world, will actually be not just gone, they'll be transformed to good. That's why that was the hint that God gave to Ezekiel in the prophecy that he showed him. That's going to be in this week's Haftorah. I'll put it up, God willing, today. It says, take a big, a frying pan of iron and make it a wall of iron. And this will be a sign for the house of Israel, the Beit Yisrael, for the Jewish people. A kavanah, the intention is of the destruction by means of iron, namely bad iron, is in order that afterward should be revealed the completion of iron, of holiness of the holy temple. And even more, that the relevance of the future redemption, which is hinted at, we did this, by the way, yesterday, we hinted at the 10th day of Tevis. The 10th day of Tevis, the month of Tevis, is the 10th day of the Jewish month, 10 months from Nisan, from Passover. Chodesh Asiri, this is the 10th month, this is the month of Tevis. Laminyan is counting the months from Nisan, which Nisan is the month of redemption, when the Jews got out of Egypt. And the 10th month itself, the 10th day of the 10th month, Asiri Sheba Asiri, this is the number 10 is holy. There's a commandment in Judaism to take 1/10 of your animals and give them to the holy temple. They became holy. So they would count. They would let the animals out one at a time. And the number 10 would be holy. That's how you didn't just count all your animals 100 and then separate 10. No, you had to let the animals out of their the stall, wherever they are, one at a time. One at a time. And the 10th one that comes out, every number 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, number 10, you hit it with this color, and that becomes holy. That way separate. And then the number 10 is holy. So now we have the 10th of the 10th, the 10th day of the 10th month. Shalom, as this hints at the completion of the future redemption. The holy of the holies. And this is so it's hinting at the fact that it was on that day is hinting at something that's going to happen in another 2,500 years, namely the completion of the number 10. It says that the Alay Asar, it says an instrument that was of 10 strings or whatever. The 10th song says the 10th, all these are going to be made by the Moshiach. The 10th red cow will be made by the Moshiach. Even the number 10 and the whole land of Israel, not the land of the 7 nations that we have now, but the land of the 10 nations that God promised to Abraham. We have not received the Keni and the Kenizi and the Kadmoni. We haven't received them yet. Mashiach will add on 3 more lands to Israel. Odzos and even more. Chodesh Tevet, the month of Tevet, including the whole month, the 10th day is is called the month that the body gets pleasure from the body. The month of Tavis is a cold month. Tekufa Tavis. It's supposed to be the coldest month in the year. Even though I don't know what's happening here in Israel, it's sort of warm every day, but nevertheless, it's the coldest month. So it says it's the month that bodies get pleasure from bodies. Shaguf, that the body, so to speak, which is physically what this means is husband and wife, right? It's a cold month. And so it's a month that to get warmer, so one body is next to another body. Right? That's what it said. But here we can think this spiritually. One body is God, and so to speak, kiviyachol, so to speak. I mean, we're made in God's image, right? And that's Mahuso, God's essence. God's body, so to speak, gets pleasure, so to speak, from the body. Who is the other body? The Jewish people. Not just the Jewish people, but every single Jew. That this refers mainly on when is God going to get pleasure from every single Jew. This is talking about the future. That then, an neshama nizonos min haguf, that's when the body is going to be higher than the soul. All the souls are going to come, that's the raising of the dead. That's going to be the body that Adam had, right? Everyone will reveal this body. And even more, hana ha'atzmos kiviyachol min haguf, so to speak, God's essence will get pleasure from Jewish bodies, from Jewish, will be alive. Ukad hadgasha, even more like this year. This is the 10th day of Tavis. This year does not apply. It applied back then when the Rebbe gave this speech. What is it, 33 years ago? But that was it fell on Tuesday. Okay. Tuesday. Let's maybe we can skip over this. And then maybe we shouldn't, but we will. According to this, now we can understand the connection between the 10th day of Tavis and Parshas Vayechi, the blessing that Yaakov gave to all of his sons. That's how we started this. The Siyum and the Chosam, that's the end of the book of Bereshit, which we said, the book of Bereshit, Genesis, which is called the straight book, because it talks about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they were straight to God. The strengthening of, and how it gives strength to all the books that come after it. Because when we finish reading this book of Bereshit, right, when we read the last sentence in synagogue on Shabbat, so everyone says, Chazak, Chazak, Benit Chazek. But every time you finish a book, reading one of the 5 books of Moses in the synagogue, right, it's read in public. The Torah has been read in public for 3,300 years. Moses instituted that it should be read in public. 3,300 years, non-stop. Even when the Jews were in exile, wherever they were, they managed. I imagine they were in Auschwitz. Is pretty hard to do it, but there were some Jews, other places where they read the Torah. The Torah was always being read. So the division of the Torah into 5 books. When one of the books is finished being read in public, so everyone says, Chazak, Chazak, Nit Chazek. Be strong, and we will be strengthened. So this, when we finish the book of Genesis, which that's what we're going to do the Shabbat, because we're reading the last chapter of Genesis, which is this week's chapter, Vayechi. So everyone stands up and says, be strong, and be strengthened. Even since that the end of the Torah and the finishing of the first book of the Torah is talking about how all of the Jewish people at that time, Yaakov and his sons, they're in Egypt. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim. That's how this week's Torah portion starts off. That Yaakov lived in Egypt 17 years. V'yosem ba'aron, and they put him into a coffin in Egypt. So even though it was very nice, Yaakov is together with his sons and he's giving blessings to everybody. And like we just finished learning, he gave a blessing to Yehuda, Moshiach. But the fact is this was the beginning of the exile. This became the exile. The Jewish people went into Egypt and they were fruitful. They multiplied over there. This is Peru, Ravu, Yishrutsu, Ma'od. They were very many. And in the course of just, a few hundred years, there was like, I guess how many would say this is 3 million got out. And that was only 1/5. 3 million Jews got out of Egypt, 600,000 just men above the age of 20. And that's not counting the children. So about 3 million Jews got out. And that was only 1/5 of the Jewish people. So that's like 15 million people were in Egypt, Jews. And that was only in the course of 210 years. That's how long they were in Egypt, 210 years. So in the course of those 210 years, there came from 70 people to 15 million people. That's a lot of people. 15 million. The reason the others didn't get out of Egypt is because they didn't want to. They died in the plague of darkness. But nevertheless, these Yaakov coming down into Egypt with his sons, that was the beginning of the exile. Haboy Mitzrayim. And this began the slavery into Egypt even after Yosef died. And they put Yosef also in an ark, in a coffin in Egypt. True, Yaakov said that he wants to be buried Yaakov was buried in Israel. And Yosef, they took Yosef's ark with them, or his coffin with them, when they left Egypt. V'yesh tzorach, there's necessary b'chizuk al kol zaman meshach hagalus. But so we're reading over here a very beautiful, pleasant thing. The Yaakov is with the sons, and they're all getting blessed. But the fact of the matter is, this is the beginning of the terrible exile that was going to be in Egypt. It says as soon as Yosef and his brothers died, then the Levi was the last one to die. Then the exile began. As ad la'aliyah min hagalus, until the coming from the exile that we're going to come out any second to Geula. Like it says that here we're talking about the Geula, the redemption that Moses brought about. It says that Reuven and Shimon, they went down. Reuven and Shimon, they came out. The tribes of Reuven and Shimon, they came out. Shiarita the Gullus, that this going down into exile was in order that they should get out of the exile. That's why the Jews were suffered in Egypt, so that they would come out. That was the birth of the Jewish people. Like it says in the end of the book of Chronicles, Hashem Elokei Hashamayim, God, the God of heaven, Pakad Alai, told me, Levanot Lo Bayit B'Yerushalayim, to build a house in Jerusalem. Mi Mikem Mikol Amo Hashem Elokei is with me. Will come up. Will come up. That's the end of the book of. Here we go. The end of the book of Chronicles. That was. Here, just 1 second. Excuse me 1 minute. End of the book of Chronicles. Here we go. Give me a moment. This is the beginning of the building of the second temple. Building of the second temple. Here it goes. And God speaks to king, this and this. Oh. And this is, who said this? Kirush, the king of Persia. What was it? King, how do they call it? What do they call it in English? How does it use? Cyrus, I guess. Cyrus, the king of Persia. He said, God has spoken to me and told me to build. Who wants to come up with me to build? That's how the book of Chronicles ends up. He says, let's go and build the second temple. But it's hinting at the third temple. That the reason the Jewish people went into Egypt and the reason the first temple was destroyed was in order that there should be built a temple. Here in the end of Chronicles talks about the second temple, but that was also destroyed. And it's hinting at the third temple, Aliyah mi'agalos al Gula, to build a temple which is even higher. Like it says, greater will be this last house than the first house. That this refers to the second temple, but it mainly refers to the third temple. And it comes from the Zohar. Where do we get this from? 130, where is in the Zohar? Here we go. It says, no, it doesn't say. Anyway, in the Midrash, also in the Zohar, that's where it comes from. Good. But Tochen Achizuk, the main straight, that's what we say, Chazak, Chazak, Yit Chazek, where do we get the power to survive? And not only to survive, but also to keep positive in this tremendously long exile. I mean, God already destroyed one temple, two temples, Any normal person will say, that's it. God has abandoned the Jewish people, right? Basically, Christianity is based on that. That's it. The temple has been destroyed and forget the whole thing. But the whole thing is, no, where do we get the power to stand against this apparent fact that that's it? The Jews are, we get it from Vayechi Yaakov. 2,000 years from Vayechi Yaakov. Yaakov, his thing is Torah. Yaakov is the middle pillar. Yaakov is the middle pillar that goes from one end to the other. Yaakov comes from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. Namely, that Yaakov brought down Kamoshahu Lamaila, just as godliness is in his essence, without any change to this world. That's Yaakov. Yud is the highest letter of God's name, and Akev means the heels. By means of this, Midgala is revealed the Tokev Mitziyoto, the power of Emet. Like it says, Titain Emet Liakov. Truth. What is truth? Truth means that God is really the boss creating everything. The world seems to scream the opposite. So, okay, but that's because the world is a lie. The world is a lie. And we have to be connected to the truth. Eternal truth. Yaakov Avinu, like it says, Yaakov did not die. And therefore, from Jacob, and by means of Yaakov, by Yaakov is Yisrael, right? Yaakov, and by his name was changed to Yisrael. Yaakov, it wasn't not like Abraham that his name was changed and he was never called Avram again. He was only called Avram. Yaakov's name was added. They added a name to Yaakov. Yaakov and Yisrael. And therefore, by means of it is drawn down the strength to all the Jewish people to the whole time of exile, even when the Jewish people go into exile, even when the Jewish people in this confusing, terrible world, right? Nasa Etzelon, there is by them, nevertheless, Vayechi Yaakov, that Yaakov is alive. Chaim Emiti, true life, according to the Torah. Shebezem Mugash, this is stressed, the Tokef Emitit, the Nitzi is the power, true power, and eternal power of the Jewish people. Kafisha Midgala Be'ilui, V'Shlemos of the Geula Emitit V'Shlema. Like it's going to be revealed in the future redemption. Gula Nitzchis, an eternal redemption, Beit HaMikdash HaShlishi, the third temple. The Jews are able to hold on to the truth. Geula Shlishi is the third redemption of the third temple, an eternal temple. And the Jewish people will show that they're eternal, not just the people in general, but the Jewish bodies. Every single Jew that died will come back to life. How it's going to be, because there's reincarnations and they have different bodies, Hashem will figure it out. Kashurim in, that's the whole thing of Yaakov. This is the whole idea of Yaakov. That's what it means. Yaakov didn't die. Yaakov is the Jewish people. The Jewish people didn't die, even in the time of exile. In more detail, Achizuk, the power of this whole time of exile until the future redemption, which should not be future, it should be right here now, will be made by Zaro B'chaim. It says in the Torah, it says in the Gemara, it says that Yaakov did not die. It says, what do you mean Yaakov didn't die? It says in the Torah that he was embalmed and that he was buried. It says it only appeared that he died. He didn't really die. Just as there's another sentence that says that Yaakov and his offspring, just like his offspring are alive, the Jewish people are here, so Yaakov is alive. Okay, that can be looked at in several ways. One way is just like the Jewish people are here, so Yaakov is here in his body. Another way is that Yaakov's degree of being alive depends on how much his children are alive. Alive means that they act like Jews. Even since the eternalness of Jacob is stressed by Zaro, depends on his offspring, the Jewish people. Ahemshech v'kiyum, the Zaro, namely the continuation of Yaakov's offspring and the offspring of those offspring until the end of all the generations. Behanhagatam, b'chaim yom yom, how they act in their day-to-day life, if they're going in the way of Yaakov. In other words, Jews are Jews no matter what, even if they deny it, even if they don't know it, even if their mother didn't know, their grandmother didn't know it. As soon as they find out that they're Jews, right, then they have the option to act like Jews. But even if they don't know that they're Jews, the fact is that they are Jews and they have the ability and the merit that they can act like Jews, they can act like Yaakov in the world. And when they do that, then that enlivens Yaakov and enlivens the Jewish people. This is what makes the raising of the dead come closer. By means of that, it reveals the eternalness of the future redemption and the future temple, which is which corresponds to Jacob. The first temple corresponds to Abraham. Second temple corresponds to Yitzchak. The third temple corresponds to Yaakov. That's what it means, Vayechi Yaakov, that we, his offspring, should be alive, feeling Yaakov. You see, the world is against us. The world is screaming out that it's not so. So the answer is ignore it. You have to pay attention to the truth. And there were a lot of Jews, they say the story. I never saw this written, but I say the story. I've heard it a lot of times. That someone wrote to the Satmar Rebbe Yoel, who was a very holy person, and he also went through the Holocaust. And they said to him that this person lived in like Chicago or San Francisco or something, and the Rebbe of Satmar, he was in New York, lived in New York. So he said, Rebbe, I can't come to you all the time, and I need sometimes your blessings. And sometimes when there's difficulties, what should I do? So the Rebbe wrote back to him that if you need my blessing urgently, then go to any Jew that has a number on his arm that went through the Holocaust and ask him for a blessing. He's holy. A Jew that held on to his Judaism, even he held on to his Jewish identity through the Holocaust and didn't let the suffering and the apparent success of the Nazis move him to, how do you say, to shake him from his Judaism, but he still holds on to the fact that he's a Jew, is that person, he has the ability to bless also. In other words, it shows there's something eternal of the Jewish people that cannot be touched, cannot be harmed, even if the whole world is against them. The Inyan says, this is especially, it says, in the end of this week's Torah portion, that Vayishtacho, that they bow down Yisrael al Rosh HaMitah. Says that Yisrael bow down on the head of the bed. This is when Yosef comes to his father and asks for a special blessing for his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he blesses them, and it says, Vayishtacho Yisrael, that Yisrael, he bowed down, it says, on the top of his bed. What does it mean? This is because, what does it mean, the top of his bed? Yaakov's bed is referring to his offspring, the children. The blessing that he would give to the 12 tribes, that he blessed them, all of them, he blessed all of them to the 12 tribes, of all the 12 tribes, which includes all the Jewish people. This was drawn down, this drew down the eternalness of Yaakov until the end of all generations. The power that Yaakov, Vishtachu, we said before in Likkutei in Torah Or, Vishtachu means that he drew down blessings. He drew down blessings to all of the tribes, namely to me and you, to all the end of time. Shebakoach said that this power of the blessings that Yaakov gave to the tribes, which is us, this power, we can go out and we can elevate ourselves from the exile into the true redemption. For Yeshlom, we can say that that's what it means, that Yaakov's offspring are alive. This is also hinted at it. Rumors has said that the exile was being planted. Zuriah. Zurat, the Jewish people, that God scattered the Jewish people around, is called that he scattered the seeds. Like I told you in that example, that the man scattered the seeds in the plant. The Jewish people, it's called Zuriah. The Jewish people have been planted all over the world. When God destroyed the temple, he scattered the Jews around like a farmer. Whatever. He scatters the seeds around. He plants them. This is the beginning of the growth, which is going to be in the redemption. We say it's Tzemach David. We talk about King David. Like you said before, this is the whole idea of the strength of the all time of the exile. Since that we know that the growth of the redemption will come by means of planting of our deeds and our service the whole time we're serving God in the time of exile. So in some ways, a Jew putting on tefillin in Chicago in the middle of exile, and there's no holy temple, and the Jews are all scattered around, is worth more than a Jew putting on tefillin in the first temple. Because it's planting a seed of holiness, and from that grows something incomparable to the seed. Right? A seed has no taste to it, no smell. You plant an apple seed or something like that. Grows up this tree that has a smell and fragrance, and it's big. You can take shade under the leaves, and there's apples, and they have a taste to them, and the flowers, they have a smell with color. All these things. Who would dream it would come from a seed? The same thing. Who would dream that from doing a commandment, a Jew in the exile would come this amazing thing called the redemption? According to this, now it's understood the connection of Parshas Vayechi to the 10th day of Teves, because the 10th day of Teves, this stresses the beginning of the destruction and the exile of the Jewish people and the siege of Jerusalem. This is the beginning also of the building of Jerusalem, the building of the third temple, which will be eternal. Therefore, we read, that's why we're reading now, Vayechi, that in Yechi is stressed the beginning of the exile in Egypt, how Yaakov brought all the Jews down into Egypt, including also, and it includes also the power to go out of it. Yaakov gave blessings to all, like the Zuriah, like planting seeds, like we said before. That this includes in it is the beginning of the tzmicha, of the growth of the future redemption. The Yom Tov Yotam, we can make even this bigger, sweeter. The connection between Zaro B'chaim, how the children of Yaakov are alive, and the power of iron, of holiness. That the destruction of the temple was by means of iron, of the evil side. But nevertheless, this shows the power of the iron of the holy temple in the future. Since that Yaakov's children are alive, this is the completion. So, let's just say, what's going on here? Bad things are only just planting seeds. You plant a seed in the ground, the seed rots. The seed is not there anymore. Like the story I told you, the farmer went through the seeds in the ground. He's throwing away seeds. You could do something with the seeds. The same thing. Bad things, seeds, you put it in the ground, it rots. The same thing when bad things happen. For instance, Yaakov and his children went down into Egypt. That's terrible. That began the exile. The Nebuchadnezzar made siege on Jerusalem. That's terrible. That began the destruction of the temple, the exile. He says, really, the fact of the matter is these two things were just like planting seeds. And even though they seem bad in the beginning, that they transformed to good. And that's the idea of Barzel. Barzel, iron, was the instrument used to destroy the temples. But it ends up that the destroying of the temples it was just the beginning of an amazing process. So this iron contained in it the ability of an amazing growth. That's what it says, that the first temple and second temple, they could be destroyed by iron, because iron is stronger than the stones of the first and the second temple. But the third temple will be made from iron. Nothing can destroy it. Avenel, Barzel, that's what it says. It says, 1 second. This is the completion of the 12 tribes. That's the 4 mothers, which are their first initials are Bila, Rachel, Zilpah, Valea, remember, of holiness. Like it says, Avne Barzel, says that the stones of Israel are the stones of iron. Avnea, Lorak, Bonea, not just Bonea, which means the word Bonea means to build. Altikra Avnea, don't say it's stones, but it's Bonea, it's builders, same letters. Elagam Meleshin Ben, but it also is from the language of Ben, a son. Habanim Shel Barzel, we are the children of Barzel. We are the children of iron, but Barzel is also the 4 mothers. We're the children Ben, Bonea, Avneha. Her sons are Barzel. What's Barzel? Bila, Rachel, Zilpah, Valea. We are the sons of iron. Of the 4 mothers by means of being strong like iron of the Jewish people through the exile in all matters of holiness, mahapchin, we can transform the iron of bad, the destructive forces which destroyed the temple, to iron of holiness, to build the third temple, which will be eternal. As we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow. Okay, like I said before, there will not be a class tomorrow morning. No class tomorrow morning. Tell your friends that there won't be. I'll put it up on the thing also. There won't be a class tomorrow morning, but I will, God willing, because my grandson is making a bar mitzvah tonight, and I'll be away in Miron, and he's getting called up to the Torah tomorrow morning. So I'll be there for that also. So I won't be here for the, but God willing, I will make these classes tomorrow afternoon, and I'll put them up on YouTube so you can look if you want to. And you can look, even if you don't want to, you can look, but it'll be there to look at. So that is what's going to happen tomorrow. No class tomorrow, but on Friday, there will be a class Friday morning. Yes, class Friday morning. Okay. And YouTube, God willing, will also be tomorrow afternoon. And now stories. Tell you the stories. 1 second. 1 second.
יום יום.